Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast, where we are all in pretty much universal agreement that if they ever do a US version live-action movie of Lupin the Third, they should totally cast Nicolas Cage, because I think he proved himself worthy in the National Treasure franchise. What do you guys think?
He was great he was really, really good in The Ghost Boy.
The Ghost Boy?
Ghost Rider.
Yeah, really good.
Oh,
you just
Ghost
made that movie
yeah.
up.
The Ghost Boy, yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, the only thing that I recall that sounds like Ghost Boy is Ghost Dad with Bill Cosby, and we're not allowed to talk about that anymore.
No, we're not. We can't talk about that.
No, that movie is no longer fun to make fun of because, yes.
Thanks, Pokemon.
I would want Nicolas Cage as Zenigata, and I'm just trying to figure out who could play Fujiko Mine and who could play Jigen, because I think those are the two toughest roles.
Fujiko could be Andy Serkis.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
I can see it.
I could see it. He did so well in Lord of the Rings and the Planet of the Apes movies, so it's great testing ground for Fujiko Mine.
Yeah.
They could do the full motion video thing that they do, like cover him in all the little cotton balls.
Yeah.
And he can be Fujiko.
Man.
Yeah, and what they'll do is
same...
instead of animating like a 3D like Fujiko, it'll just be Snoke from Star Wars. And nobody will ever address it as Snoke showing up as Fujiko.
Or they could use that wonderful technology to make a Lupin the Third style game in the style of LA Noire.
They already did that. Remember? Adam Sussler covered it on X-Plane.
Oh yeah!
Wow, that's an old reference.
It wasn't good. Go find that review, because yes, a Lupin the Third game actually did get released here in the States.
Talk about a time capsule.
Okay, you guys started out this episode way too silly. It's definitely not my fault, so I think we should really get back on track here.
Okay.
Serious business, Lupin.
It's very serious business, and because we have Japanese animation to talk about, because in this episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast, we will be talking about the 1987 OVA/theatrical movie Lupin the Third and the Fuma Conspiracy. But before that, we are going to spend a little bit of time just doing catch-up, absolutely nothing silly whatsoever, just talking amongst each other, catching up a little bit, and figuring out what everybody's been up to. So, I hope everyone's doing well. Is everyone happy and healthy?
Trying to
One,
be.
not the other.
I'm very, very healthy.
Excellent. Well, we've got one healthy. Is there a happy in the room?
I'm pretty. Okay. I'm happy. Anytime we're talking about Lupin, just makes me happy.
That's fair. I'm also happy to talk about Lupin. He's a funny, wacky thief. Yeah, so it's good to hear you guys are doing generally well. Andrew, you recently started a cool new thing, so can you tell us what you've been up to?
I did. I moved to a little town called Boone, North Carolina, to go to college at a certain Appalachian State University up here, where everyone's insane and the weather's great.
Cool. Have you enjoyed your classes so far?
Yeah, they've all been really good so far. I have one professor today that wore a yellow plaid shirt and white jeans with yellow shoes.
Oh man.
We said that in
I
perfect
knew
unison.
Yeah, I knew I was in the right place when I walked into class this morning.
That just sounds like something that you would wear in the winter months.
Does it really?
I think it kind of does.
You know me so well.
I try.
He sounds more stylish than my college professor, who would wear everything was in jeans, a jean jacket, jeans, ponytail. He was from the '60s, man.
Did he ever wear a leather jacket with a jean vest over it?
I wish. That would have been just the cherry on top.
That would have been supreme.
So since Andrew's been involved in fashion pursuits up at the University of Appalachian area, Bill and Tobias, you guys recently attended a little convention. If you guys want to chat about that, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I went for Friday to the Queen City Anime Con in Charlotte, North Carolina, which Queen City and later on in the year Ichiban are pretty much my local cons because where I live, I'm very close to Charlotte. And Tobias was there for the entire weekend, basically being the all-star of panels, doing just awesome work. And my brother went with me, and we saw Tobias's panel about anime in the 90s, and Hank saw the Daikon 4 short for the first time.
Oh,
and
so good.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And he basically was swept off his feet. Like, his mouth was agape in full amazement.
Yeah.
Like, he basically, seeing, like, Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk for the first time is basically Hank's reaction to Daikon 4. Whereas as soon as he saw Daikon 4, he had to go hunt down Daikon 3 online.
That's so much funny. Yeah.
That has become our footprint at conventions, I swear. Even if it's, like, not related to any of our panels at all. Like, just a random... If I put... I feel obligated to put Daikon 4 in all of my panels.
And usually, whenever I show it, I look over the audience and get reactions. And usually, by the time the stormtroopers show up, where the Daikon girl fights Darth Vader, I usually get a few people like laughing or just kind of surprised. But from that moment on, like looking over, I like looked at Hank, and yeah, like Bill is not exaggerating. This dude, I blew his mind. Literally,
It's just the power of Daikon. That video is so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad every time we show Daikon 4 at a con, it's always someone's first, and just to see those pure elated reactions from pretty much everyone that sees it is always very exciting, very rewarding.
Exactly. It's one of those things that a lot of the old guard know pretty well, and it gets talked about a whole lot, but for like the new people coming in, just the idea of anime characters mixed with like the Western stuff, and now that like comic books, more in the mainstream ever with the movies, when they see like, Spider-Man later and Superman, it just kind of like freaks them out even more.
Yeah, definitely. Because usually when people think of old anime, it's never really... A lot of that stuff doesn't take the through line of like connection back to like Western stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually very Dragon Ball or very Cowboy Bebop or something like that is what people think of when they think of old anime. But to see see all that nerd culture shoved into one piece of old anime is very the novelty still holds up really well.
Right.
Mm.
And it's a great song too, super catchy.
Yeah.
So Tobias, what was your how did the panels go?
It went really well. I got there Friday right on time due to Charlotte traffic. And yeah, I asked my panelists Friday, but for any of you guys who are listening that live in Charlotte or traveled through Charlotte or been to Charlotte recently, like why is the entire city under construction from start to finish? Like for the entire time I was in the Charlotte vicinity, like it took me twice as long to get anywhere just because of everything shut down.
It's because they're not done yet.
we've just begun our dark work.
It's because people are constantly moving here, and the city's like, well, we need to build more places for people to go live, so more construction.
But yeah, no, I got there just on time for the 90s panel. Did that in Star Wars that first night, and did the rest of my shtick Saturday. But overall, yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. Like, the panels went off without a hitch. There were no technical glitches at all. It was a step up from last year. Last year, they just had, like, the one big TV as the panel monitor, the panel screen.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't really ideal. Like, they had it on the bottom of the stage, so only the people in the first few rows really could see it. But this year, they had a full screen in the corner, and the panel rooms were really more long than anything, which is kind of strange. I'm used to it being, well, I'm used to it being where when you walk in the room, like you see the front stage all the way at the other end of the room. but
more
they've got
boxy,
it.
less rectangle.
Yeah, they have it more. They have it like sideways. So
So
you need to walk to
were
like
they
the other end of the chairs. You have to walk all the way across the room to get to it.
were they like the quote unquote small panel rooms at AWA where they're just super long?
Uh, I mean, I guess so. If you like turn it sideways,
Okay.
it's
Because I remember that. Because I remember the panel room you did your Evangelion panel in at AWA was like it's strangely long. I thought.
yeah. It. I think the room itself was bigger than those rooms, but it was the same. Like I guess the same ratio. It just put
Okay.
the stage to like the long end instead of the short end. I guess is the best way to put it.
Oh.
A little awkward, but they had the way they had the screen in the corner was I guess turned at a weirder angle than I'm used to, so it actually worked out. So no matter where you sat, you'd see the screen really well, which I thought was pretty cool.
Even from your perspective.
Oh yeah, I could see it, and I walked around the room before one of my panels, and no matter where I was kind of standing, I could see the screen pretty well.
Cool. That's good.
I think it worked out pretty well, like the logistics of the situation. But yeah, all the other panels went really well. Audio was not a problem. They had inadvertently given me some 30-minute breaks between the panels, so I didn't have a
Nice.
situation where I had to, push out the old panelist and try to rush out really quickly. I got a lot of free time to set up and show some extra videos and just kind of hang out. That's always a pleasure. The convention itself, I felt like as far as attendance was pretty on par with last year, meaning that it's kind of a small space. There's that one long hallway that stretches around, so could be a little packed in the middle of the day. Luckily for me, I didn't really have that much of a problem because I was in panels. But I still feel like they had a good many people there. Considering they were jumping from one day to 3 or 4 technically, I feel like they didn't really diminish their numbers at all, and yeah, I think they got a really healthy thing going.
Did the traffic stay like generally consistent between the days?
As far as I could tell, when I got there late Friday, it seemed pretty busy. Little more busy overall when I was there Saturday, and I actually did have to leave Sunday morning, so I didn't get to stay all Sunday. But yeah, it seemed everyone was hanging out there all day pretty much. Even near the end, when they didn't really have too much going on, they just had like a burlesque show and a rave or dance or whatever you kids want to call it nowadays, and a couple other panels. There still seemed to be a lot of people hanging out.
Cool. Well, I'm glad because yeah, at that particular time of year, Charlotte is kind of quiet with anime cons, and like as far as I know, that Ichiban is the only one that's really in the Charlotte area, but even Concord is not exactly Charlotte.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It's good
nice
to see. It's good to see it
that.
grow as as a new thing, a homegrown thing.
Yeah, definitely. Bill, I know you were only there for one day, but do you have any other thoughts about the con?
I like that from what I've seen that they're slowly getting better at things. Like as Tobias said, like the panel rooms are more thought out. They're trying to offer more when it comes to content for even though it's a relatively small con. They had a relatively good gamers room with just a lot of fighting games set up. Overall, I'm liking that they're slowly getting better as a con since they're relatively new, and I hope as time goes on, they grow even larger. Since I was only there for one day, the big to-dos were just, for me, I guess, was just seeing my brother's interaction with things. Like Hank's interactions with Tobias's panels were great. He also got on a game show that was it was like a YouTube game show. I don't know exactly who it is.
Huh.
So that was pretty fun. I didn't think he was gonna get on since it was anime related, but he got on, and he won a Batman manga.
Yeah, cool.
But it was cool seeing on there, and people were cheering for him. And the guy who did the I would have done it, though I was afraid that this guy was going to ask obscure, name me this obscure Geneon release from 2003, something like that.
Isn't that the stuff you know?
Not to some degree, but I just think back to the mini Battleship guys. Those guys are really good at what they do. Though some of their questions are like, man, I can't name you this obscure ADV.
That's true. You're right, because that voice actor category from one of their game shows was really difficult, because it was all really early 2000s dubs with casts that don't even work anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with fandom is just with fandom there can be a set period of when you're really involved with it, and I think those guys got really involved in it in during the bubble, when the bubble was going on, which that's awesome. I wish I could name all those obscure things that they know, but no, the quiz show I went to, they were asking more general questions, and the prizes they were offering were really good. One of them was a $50 Right Stuff gift card.
Holy
Another
wow!
one was a free pass to MomoCon.
What?
A free pass to some local cons in Virginia, and then they had some box sets too, that weren't released yet. I think one of Gundam releases, not the G Gundam one, but I think Gundam Wing, and just some really good stuff. If you did really well. So next time I'm there, and if he's there, I'm going to definitely try and get on that quiz show, because it was really good.
I'm pretty sure I wasn't there, but I think that was Grego, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, we used to meet him at Hamicon. That was pretty cool.
Oh, man, I didn't even know he was going to be there. Man, that's awesome. He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
But as for panel stuff, I'm mostly just stuck with our good buddy Tobias, because totally not blowing smoke to Tobias, but he does really good panel work. I wanted to see Hank's reactions to those.
Yeah, but I'd say other than that, it was a pretty typical small little convention, small event. I mostly just hung out, did my own stuff, and just kind of saw what was going on with most people. The dealer's room I thought was pretty on par for a small little event. There were some pretty cool artists that I got a print from one who has a really cool end of Ava scene. Ooh. But it's all kind of pixelated. It's not really blocky like you think of 8-bit style. It's a little more detailed than that.
I feel like you have talked about this before.
I hadn't seen it before. That's the thing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I got her card around here somewhere, and I had it. I can't think of her name right now. I think it's Swan or Swan something. Okay. We'll have to put that in the show notes, of course, when I find it. But that kind of stood out to me at that point. I had to buy that. I'm not usually a big print buyer, but I had to go for that for sure. And I felt like it was just, there were a lot of artists, and I felt like they were a little bit different than a lot of the stuff you see at most conventions.
I'm sorry, this is wandering a little bit into Tangent Town, but you said prints. All right, so Appalachian State has a poster sale that they do at the beginning of every semester.
Okay.
And I found a Kono Super poster, and I bought it.
So is this a used poster sale, where they the posters that people leave in their dorms?
No, I think they get them because they had a bunch of them. It was tables 30, maybe 15 feet long, of just a million posters.
They did the same thing at UNCG. It might even be the same guys. I mean, who knows? But
I don't know. But anyway, I found a Kona Super poster, which was weird to find at a college poster sale, and it's on my wall right now.
So between your your Scarface posters and your Big Lebowski posters and your marijuana leaf posters, there was a Konosuba.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was digging through like all the pots and the Joseph Stalins, and then I found
Excuse me?
no, that was a joke. But yeah, but I found a Konosuba poster. There were some One Piece posters there too, Bill. So
Ooh, I'm glad to hear that App State has kind of a nerdy posters. Like in comparison at UNCG, it's like the typical posters you see, like Scarface.
Scarface 2, Electric Boogaloo.
That's it.
yeah,
That's a good documentary. Speaking of documentaries, I guess to continue on Tangent Town real quick, Bill showed me Waking Sleeping Beauty, which is probably one of my now new favorite documentaries ever. So thank you so much, Bill. And I've got my own personal copy of it sitting right next to me right now. It came in the mail. Man, that documentary was good.
What's it about?
It is about the late 80s through the mid 90s era of the Walt Disney Company, and it basically goes through a lot of the production problems through the Disney Dark Ages, and then going into the Renaissance, and then sort of riding that wave. And it talks a lot about the company drama between like Roy Disney, who was Walt Disney's nephew, who was was he one of the presidents of the company at the time?
Like he was head of animation. No, he was basically like the vice president of animation production at the studio.
Right, and there was a lot of internal drama between like him and Michael Eisner, who was the CEO of the Walt Disney Corporation at the time, and Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was, I forget exactly his title, but he was another Disney bigwig, and he eventually left the company to found DreamWorks, so you can thank him for the Boss Baby, I guess.
yeah, you're saying it's a documentary, and all of my entire brain just like goes to Ken Burns' The Civil War, and I'm like, all I can imagine is like the Ken Burns narration with like a letter Michael Eisner wrote to his wife or something, like, "Dear Martha, it is a power struggle in the Disney office. I haven't seen my leg in a fortnight." That's all I can imagine.
Yeah, Michael Eisner sounds exactly like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for showing me that documentary, Bill. It was so good, and if you guys listening out there are big Disney freaks like myself, you gotta check it out. It's awesome.
Yeah, like if you like YouTube channels like Defunctland, which is a great kind of Disney YouTube channel, I would highly recommend checking out Waking Sleeping Beauty. It's not on streaming anywhere, sadly, but you can get the DVD of it for a pretty good price on Amazon.
Cool. Well, are you guys ready to kick Tobias out so we can talk about Lupin?
I am.
Heck yeah, man. Get out of here. But, okay, well, I guess he's gone. That was soon.
Rip.
But anyway,
Rip Toby.
thanks Tobias for stopping by, even though he can't hear us anymore. But we appreciate him coming on to talk about Queen City for a little bit. And yeah, now we can get to the main crux of the episode, talking about Lupin the Third, the Fuma Conspiracy. And we're back, folks, and like I said, we're going to be talking about Lupin the Third, the 1987 film, The Fuma Conspiracy, or Plot of the Fuma Clan is another one of the names for it. But before that, I just want to remind everyone about all of our the ways that you can connect with the Third Impact Anime Podcast or the panels that we tend to do at conventions from time to time. And the easiest way to connect with us is over on Facebook, and that's facebook.com/thirdimpactanime. You can also find a link to our Facebook group over there where we've gained a pretty small little community over there, but it's very interactive, very fun. We get a lot of really good discussions going on over there about various topics related to anime and whatnot. So please pop on into the group. And if you've joined already, please add your friends. We'd really, really appreciate being able to grow that community a little bit more. And if you guys are Twitter users, which most all of Bill and Andrew and I and Tobias are, you can find us over on Twitter at twitter.com/TI_anime, I think is right. That's right. Right. Yes. Right. Yes.
I would say like the Facebook group has been really fun lately because Tobias has been hosting group rabbit streams of stuff that's been airing this season, and that's been really fun. I think I'll probably do some Lupin rabbit streams in the near future of the TV show. Probably part 5 that's going on right now, or maybe some of the older ones in the future.
That's
the
really
rabbit
good
streams
idea.
the rabbit streams are very fun.
Yeah, they are. Rabbit is a great service, and my goal is to eventually get a schedule together where Third Impact can host Rabbit streams at like particular times in the week at some point. I think that would be really fun to do. I would organize that, but my schedule right now, because of work and things, is very, very inconsistent. But if my schedule changes, I would definitely want to facilitate doing that in the future. So look out for something like that. I really would like for the group to be able to do that on a more regular basis. I think it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yep, so there are lots of ways to connect with Third Impact stuff, and you can find this podcast wherever it is that you're listening to it right now, but you can also find it on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, and our main host is Podbean, but it sort of feeds into a lot of other podcasting services, so there are many ways in which you can listen to the show. And if you guys like the show or like the panels that we do at conventions, please consider popping over to our Facebook page and giving us a star rating and a review. That really helps out for just visibility for the show, and to get an idea of how we can improve the podcast, we can improve the panels, and just to see what you guys want and like and expect from us in the future. So we really
it helps
appreciate
us.
it.
No, sorry. Yeah, it helps us keep Mark Zuckerberg in our keeps us in Mark Zuckerberg's good graces.
Yeah.
I would also recommend if you are not totally connected to Facebook, also review us on the whatever way you get us. Like do a review on the iTunes store, do a review in the Google Play Store. Those also are very helpful as well.
Absolutely. They 100% are, and we would really appreciate any feedback that you guys could give us. But now, we're finally going to talk about Lupin. We have not talked about it for the entirety of this podcast, and it is now time to talk about the Fuma Conspiracy. Alright, so, Bill, you are the resident expert in Lupin the Third. We found that out last time when we did our episode on the very first Lupin the Third movie, The Mystery of Mamo, back a couple of months ago, which was a really fun episode. But for the people that did not get a chance to listen to that episode, which they totally should, they can go back and listen to it at any time. Can you sort of give us the rundown on what the Lupin the Third franchise is?
Sure. The Lupin the Third franchise has been around pretty much since the 1970s, where it's about Lupin the Third, grandson of Arsène Lupin, and his gang, which is made up of Fujiko Mine, which can be sometimes his enemy, sometimes his lover, sometimes his ally, his best friend, Daisuke Jigen, the greatest gunslinger ever, and Goemon, the greatest swordsman ever, who could pretty much be the Deus Ex Machina of any situation in Lupin, and they're constantly being chased by Inspector Zenigata of Interpol, whose lifelong mission and dream is to capture Lupin and put him in jail. And the fun thing about the Lupin the Third franchise is you don't have to worry about continuity like shows like Bleach or One Piece. And they go to very fun, exotic locations, and they can be they can either be centered in reality or almost into fantasy, based on what's going on. Where I describe it as it's a little bit of Indiana Jones, it's a little bit of Ocean's 11, it's a bit of
National Treasure,
a bit of National Treasure. See, this Nicolas Cage pitch is yeah, I think it's a real good idea.
I'm telling
Going
you.
in circles.
And a little bit of James Bond if you sprinkle in that. You can jump in at any point with pretty much any of the franchise. Like currently what's going on is the new Lupin the Third series that's going on right now, where they're more introducing modern technology like a Silk Road type website, dealing with terrorism and just kind of giving a more modern spin. If you want more of a classic, you could check out Castle Cagliostro, which is streaming on Netflix, which, hint, hint, we're going to do an episode on Cagliostro in the future.
100%.
100%. So I would highly recommend jumping into Lupin at any point. It's just a fun romp where you don't have to worry about continuity.
Cool. So thank you, Bill. I appreciate that background on Lupin. And that brings us to the main topic, which is the, like I've said, the 1987 OVA/theatrical film, The Fuma Conspiracy. And I've said that twice now. It's because there is a little bit of debate between whether or not this animated iteration of Lupin should be classified as a movie or as an OVA. Apparently TMS themselves, they describe it as an OVA, though technically its first release was theatrically in December of 1987. So I guess you could say either one is correct. Probably a theatrical movie would be more correct, since that is more literal. But I guess if you ask someone from TMS, they would call it an OVA, but who cares? It doesn't really matter.
You know what? I kind of view it as an OVA because when it's a shorter runtime than a usual movie, it feels like it's an hour or maybe like 70 minutes, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're classifying it as an OVA, then I'll just go with that.
It is 73 minutes, and the only reason I know that is because I have the ANN Encyclopedia up in a tab.
Oh man.
What can Anime News Network deliver us with facts?
They have the best encyclopedia out there. Like it's so thorough and wonderful. I've been using it so much lately. Lupin the Third, The Fuma Conspiracy, was released for the first time in the United States back in 2003 by the North Carolina-based company Animigo. But at the time, it was retitled to Rupin the Third, which Rupin is just the Romaji pronunciation of Lupin. It's Rupan. It's how they pronounce Lupin in Japanese, but they typically in the U.S. don't spell it that way because it's kind of like Bill said earlier. It's supposed to be a reference to Arsène Lupin, which is spelled like you would normally see Lupin spelled, Lupin. But they release it as Rupin the Third because whenever Animigo signed their initial contract with TMS to release Lupin the Third material in the United States, they signed it when the character of Arsène Lupin had not yet entered the public domain. But by 2003, that character had entered the public domain, but because they signed the contract when they did, they just decided to release it as Rupin the Third to make sure that there was no legal repercussions of any kind that they could accidentally get themselves into. So I'm sure for a while there, it was a little bit frustrating for certain collectors to own the DVD copy of Lupin the Third next to all of their iterations of Lupin the Third on DVD or VHS or what have you. Animigo did the same thing whenever they released The Legend of the Gold of Babylon in the, I want to say, also in the early 2000s or the late 90s or something like that. But since then, back in 2007, Discotheque Media, Bill's favorite company, and probably my favorite company too, re-released Lupin the Third, the Fuma Conspiracy, on DVD in a very nice collector's edition that has some wonderful liner notes and a commentary and all that sort of stuff on it for a bunch of miscellaneous Lupin content that you can enjoy.
Yeah, it's funny enough, this is Discotheque's first Lupin release. But now they've released just a bunch of Lupin product, from the Red Jacket TV series to a bunch of the TV specials. So this was their first one. It was funny because when I found this at a con for the first time, and at first I thought it was a bootleg because at the time Discotheque was a relatively new company. And they kind of hadn't built up their reputation at the time. But as Austin says, it has a lot of the bells and whistles that you would expect from a Discotheque release. Like Reed Nelson, who is pretty much, I would say, like the Lupin the Third historian who runs Lupin.net. He does an audio commentary track giving more details about it, and there's some really good liner notes. Sadly, though, this version of Lupin the Third is out of print, which is a real bummer, since I think after Casa Cagliostro, this is probably the best way to introduce people into Lupin.
I have a question that will come up later about that exact topic, so I'll save that for now. But real quick, I wanted to go through the production staff of this particular movie. So the director of the Fuma Conspiracy is Masayuki Oezeki. I think I'm saying that right. Probably not. He was the assistant director on the Galaxy Express 999 movie. He directed a couple episodes of the Captain Harlock TV series, and he's also directed episodes of Trigun, Dr. Slump, and even Fairy Tail and Kill la Kill. So he is still working up until the modern time. The screenplay writer on this movie is actually really interesting. Her name is Makoto Naito, and she is mostly a live-action film director that worked on a number of films in the 1970s and 80s. She's probably most known for directing a number of girl gang films. It's like a particular subgenre of Japanese movies that's about like girls being tough and like in gangs and like stuff like that. Just imagine like the Yakuza games, but with like an all-girl cast, but most of the time they're in school.
Or it's kind of, when I think of girl gangs, I think of the girl gang in the Warriors movie. So maybe it's kind of like an exploitation type of genre in Japan.
Yeah, it definitely is as well. Like that's part of the subgenre of that subgenre, is they a lot of them do fall into that like exploitation film where everything's like super over the top and sometimes very like sexual and violent and all that stuff. So she directed a lot of those types of films, but she was also a producer on Masashi Kobayashi's Harakiri from 1962, which is a very, very iconic and famous samurai movie. She doesn't have very many anime credits, but she was also the screenplay writer for Rintaro's Harmageddon, which I have personally not seen, but I've heard a lot of people talk about Harmageddon. It often comes up in episodes of Anime World Order, so I guess I will eventually have to check that one out one of these days. I've been meaning to get more into Rintaro's stuff. I think the only Rintaro thing I've seen is Metropolis. So I really need to watch more of his movies. So the character designer and the animation director is Kazuhide Tomunaga. He's mostly a key animator and storyboard artist on projects. He's worked on anime since the early 70s, working on stuff like Mazinger Z and the Devilman TV series. He also worked on Sherlock Hound and Anne of Green Gables. which were two things that both Hayao Miyazaki was a part of as well. He's worked on a number of Studio Ghibli movies, including Castle in the Sky, Pompoko, The Cat Returns, and as recently as The Wind Rises. He was also a conceptual character designer for Little Nemo in Slumberland, and he worked on a number of Lupin films and specials, including The Castle of Cagliostro. And he was the chief director for 2015, was it? 2015's Lupin Part 4?
Yep,
from a couple of years ago.
That's the Italian, Italy-based Lupin TV series with Rebecca Rossellini.
Yes, the one that aired on Toonami not too long ago.
Yep.
So the art director is Shichiro Kobayashi, who's a very, very iconic talent in background art and production design. He worked on Angel's Egg and Urusei Yatsura, Beautiful Dreamer, both with Mamoru Oshii. Couldn't think of his name for a second. He also worked on the Gogol 13 movie, Revolutionary Girl Utena, Space Adventure Cobra, Venus Wars, the original Berserk TV series, and Castle of Cagliostro. He worked a lot with director Osamu Dezaki in creating his iconic postcard memory moments. Like if you've ever watched anything that's directed by Dezaki, and a lot of other anime folks do this as well. Like it'll be like a screenshot where all the action will stop, and then it will hold on that one frame, and then everything will get hyper detailed. It'll look like a classic painting. And that's just a trope in anime. You see it all the time, but that was a Dezaki thing. And Kobayashi was a guy that would paint a lot of those that he did in some of his films. So most notably about Fuma Conspiracy is that the iconic Lupin the Third theme music is surprisingly absent from this film, as is all of the music of Yuji Ono, as Yuji Ono was not involved with this particular Lupin project, which is very surprising because he's pretty much provided the music of Lupin since the very, very beginning. Did he work on the original series?
I think so.
I wasn't sure because it doesn't have that main theme, but I still want to say that he did do the music for it.
The main theme doesn't really show up until Part 2, aka Red Jacket.
Right.
And though I know he wrote the love theme, which is the end credit theme for the first Lupin the Third series.
Yeah, so it is very strange that music would be absent from this movie, because 1987, Lupin the Third Part 2 would have been on TV a couple of years prior to this, so a lot of people would have really, I can assume that people probably really would have missed that because that was such an integral part of the Lupin franchise at that time, and still very much is.
My guess why the theme isn't here or Yuji Ono isn't really involved is it might be budgetary reasons.
Yeah, because there's a lot of that here.
Unfortunately, yeah, there's a lot of budgetary issues in this OVA where I think instead of getting an orchestra to do more of a jazzy soundtrack, we can just get a pop star or pop idol to do the theme song, because we can say, hey, by doing this Lupin OVA, you get more exposure because it's part of the big franchise, which means they don't have to pay as much.
Not gonna lie, though, I really like the main pop theme of this movie. I think it's a really good, 80s pop song. It's called Don't Say C'est La Vie by Masako Arakawa. It's really good, I think.
It's extremely catchy.
It is. It's a great song, and if you guys haven't already heard it in this podcast episode, you will probably hear it soon.
I think that's a good way to describe this movie.
What? How so?
Extremely catchy.
Yeah, I guess so. So Bill, do you want to go through well, we mentioned already that there were some budgetary concerns. Can you elaborate on how that impacted the voice cast for this movie?
Yeah. The main Lupin voice cast were not asked to be a part of this production because of budgetary reasons, and they mostly got pretty well-known Japanese voice actors to be in this, but I think they were thinking, well, because they're recurring, the original Lupin cast would be wanting a bigger pay because it's another recurring role. We probably couldn't afford this for the OVA, so we'll just get an entire new cast. This led to a very sad effect that the original Lupin the Third cast thought that Monkey Punch, the creator of Lupin the Third and writer of the manga, was the cause for the cast change. Monkey Punch denied this, but sadly, even though he's denied that he was part of this cast change, this caused a resentment between him and the original Lupin the Third cast, pretty much until their deaths, sadly.
That is really sad. I hate to hear that because from what I've read, apparently Monkey Punch really didn't have anything to do with it, so it's really unfortunate that that whole misunderstanding resulted in such a resentment for such a long time.
Austin, would you like to go through our cast for this wonderful OVA?
Heck yeah. Alright, so because of what Bill sort of illustrated, this particular film is kind of a sore spot for a lot of Japanese Lupin fans because of the bad blood involved with not involving Yuji Ono, not involving the original Japanese cast. So a lot of Japanese fans are not huge on this movie because of that. And a lot of American fans are apparently more receptive to it. We'll get into that in a minute, but the cast for this particular film has Toshio Furukawa as Lupin the Third, a very famous Japanese voice actor in the 80s and the 90s. He played Piccolo in Dragon Ball Z. He is Ace in One Piece, and he is Ataru in Urusei Yatsura. So as Inspector Zenigata, we have Seizo Kato, who is Han Zako in Outlaw Star, and he is the original voice of Megatron in the Japanese dub of Transformers.
Wow.
He also appears in the original Vampire Hunter D movie as Count Magnus Lee, the guy that kind of looks like Ernest Borgnine that Sully and I made fun of way back in the Vampire Hunter D episode. He is in Legend of the Galactic Heroes, he's in Gunsmith Cats, and he is the Japanese dub voice of Shere Khan in the Jungle Book, which is pretty cool.
Bravo.
So we have Mami Koyama as Fujiko Mine. She is Ryoko in Urusei Yatsura. Kei in Akira. She's Miki in City Hunter. She's Launch in Dragon Ball. Chiyoko in Millennium Actress. Big Mom in One Piece. And she's currently the voice of Queen Serenity in Sailor Moon Crystal. As Goemon, we have Kaneto Shiozawa, who is D in Vampire Hunter D. So we have both Count Magnus and D, which is pretty cool. He's also Oberstein in Legend of the Galactic Heroes. And then as Jigen, we have Banjo Ginga, which I think is a stage name. It's what I looked up is that is his stage name. I don't have his actual name on here, but that's what he goes by anyway. He is Zabi in Mobile Suit Gundam, and he is also Liquid Snake in the Metal Gear Solid series.
Huh.
So
That's awesome.
Interesting voice cast there. Definitely a lot of folks that have done a lot of work in anime. Not unknowns by any means, even in their day for sure. Probably especially in their day, because some of them were involved in Urusei Yatsura, which was a huge hit. And yeah, so very very interesting cast. And in the movie itself, like while the voices are definitely different, I think they do a fantastic job. I guess we can talk about that in a bit as well. But Bill, do you want to give us the setup of what Fuma Conspiracy's story is about?
Sure. Guess what, guys? Goemon is getting married, which blows my mind because this man gets so embarrassed by being around women. It's amazing. I can't believe he's able to land somebody. He is planning to marry, how do I pronounce her name?
Murasaki. Just
Murasaki.
go Inabe Murasaki.
Yeah, thank you. Inabe Murasaki, who is a daughter of a samurai clan leader. But during their wedding, which, man, that's cold, they're interrupted by the Fuma clan kidnapping the bride-to-be and demanding that her family give their ancient treasure for her safekeeping. So Lupin, Jigen, Goemon, and Fujiko work together once again to save Murasaki and get the treasure before the Fuma clan can steal it.
And basically, the movie goes from there, just going through like Lupin chasing the Fuma clan, with Goemon and the gang trying to get his fiance back, and then Zenigata sort of also on the tail again. So the setup is very similar to pretty much most Lupin things. It's not a very unique story in terms of the plot or the characters or anything like that. But I think there's a lot of really excellent elements that make this movie like probably one of my favorite Lupin things, having seen it. So Bill, think back to the first time that you watched Fuma Conspiracy. At that time, what Lupin stuff had you seen, and what did you think of Fuma Conspiracy the first time you saw it?
Let's see. I think back then, because I was just getting into Lupin, I probably had seen Cagliostro and some of Red Jacket, because Red Jacket back in the day was on Toonami. But other than that, it kind of, I'd forgotten about it in general. But then I found the Fuma Conspiracy at a con, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting just based off the cover. And I know of Lupin, so I want to try this out. And when I watched it for the first time, the thing that blows my mind about it is, one, for an OVA and for some budgetary concerns, it has such good animation where it's very fluid. You get really unique character expressions that you wouldn't I hadn't seen in other more recent Lupin specials. The action scenes just go everywhere and just every little detail in it. And I love Fuma Conspiracy. I wish this was in print so that way more people could see it, or if it could be streaming somewhere.
This is the first time that Andrew and I had both seen it, so I'll let you go first, Andrew. What did you generally think of Fuma Conspiracy compared to other Lupin things that you've seen?
I haven't seen a ton of Lupin. I've seen a little bit of. I think I've seen one episode of the original Green Jacket, maybe two, and I've seen some of Part 4. I haven't seen Castle of Cagliostro. I've seen
blasphemy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But no, I haven't seen any of Part 5. But as sort of a Lupin novice, watching this movie and hearing about the controversy it has with Japanese audiences, didn't apply to me because I don't really know that much about the series, and I didn't see any of that as a problem. But this movie, how long did you say it was? 73 minutes?
Yep.
It packs a lot into 73 minutes. Like, so much happens in this movie, and it just keeps going. It doesn't slow down. It just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. And, some may find that a pacing issue, but I certainly don't, because Lupin's not supposed to stop. Lupin's a ridiculous, sort of over-the-top crime series that's just a ton of fun, and that's exactly what this movie is. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah, I would say that that is one of my absolute favorite parts about this, in particular, is that, you know, it does not feel like 73 minutes. It feels like about 30. Like, it goes by so quickly, and so much stuff happens, like, visually. Like, the story is very straightforward, and the situations that the characters get themselves into are pretty straightforward, but it's just packed full of excellent action animation, and some pretty cute character moments, just really good little scenes here and there. But it's just so much fun. Like, it is just a breeze to watch. It's super easy to just sit down and put on and just sort of get enthralled by the whole thing. Like, there's so many wonderful action sequences and so many just excellent things to latch onto. Like, you could sit down and in 15 minutes you'll be like, oh my gosh, 73 minutes passed by.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I did not. I knew of the budgetary issues. I didn't know the kind of disdain that Japanese fans have of the special. It's kind of funny. It's kind of like within Gundam how American fans love Gundam Wing and G Gundam, but Japanese fans view that as the worst of the franchise. Uh,
I would say that's for slightly different reasons, but I hear what you're trying to say.
well, it just my general kind of point I'm trying to bring up is that most of the time it seems that when the Japanese don't like something, Americans really love it, or the West really likes it, like
That's true.
Cowboy Bebop, for example. But I think what's great about this special is this OVA is it's constantly moving, where there's no downtime, and even for a typical Lupin thing, uh, like the plot is even more bare, where we're not. It's very straight to the point of Goemon's getting married to this girl. Ninja Clan attacks. We must defeat Ninja Clan as they have kidnapped Goemon's bride to be. There's ancient treasure. There you go. There's the plot.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's got this element of like tomb raiding to it as well. Like, they go into the place where the family's hidden treasure is, and like there's a bunch of booby traps and like poison gas and stuff like that, and it's got that great action element to it that just makes, just like I've said earlier, just makes it go by so quickly because it's so much fun.
It really reminds me of like an Uncharted game.
Yeah. Yeah, like
That's exactly what this reminds me of because of like all the like the big like villain dude that isn't Zenigata, a big like villain dude that they have to beat, and there's a treasure at the bottom, but they can't have the treasure because of things, and yeah, that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of, like Nathan Drake's in a hole somewhere, trying to get treasure and fighting people.
and Nathan Drake has a Lupin-esque quality to him, whereas like
Hmm.
Indiana Jones, like he cracks a joke, but he cracks a whip more often.
Yeah.
But like Nathan Drake is a wisecrack person, and so is Lupin and things like that.
Hmm.
Which brings me to another question that I had. Like, generally, in terms of this film versus other Lupin things, that Bill, you can probably speak more to this. But how did you feel about the interpretations of these characters in the movie? I know that like the idea of Goemon getting married and like being super close to a woman is like really weird because most of the time he's very strange around women. But what did you think about the way that this movie handles the characters?
I would say that as for characterization, like pretty much everyone is on point. Um, where Fujiko is scheming, and she all she cares about is the money, and she's using her feminine wiles to get what she wants. Um, Jigen is just by Lupin's side and trying to figure, using his wonderful skill with with guns to figure things out. And Lupin, of course, is like being trickery as well, just like, yeah, I'll help you, but I really want the treasure, which he's also done to some degree in other Lupin specials and episodes. The one, I think the one that gets kind of the least amount of use, or is kind of a plot device, sadly, is Goemon's bride to be, because they give her a little bit of interactions with Goemon, but it's very much damsel in distress, and it made me, if you can just accept it on face value, it's not gonna cause any issues, but they you don't understand why Goemon and this girl would get married in the first place, because they don't seem to have really any chemistry, excluding maybe her just being very doting to Goemon. And also, she seems very young for Goemon, which is a little bit weird.
And since I haven't seen the sort of stuff like on the lighter side of Lupin, because at points Blue Jacket can get dark, and I've only seen a little bit of Green Jacket, and I've seen a handful of the woman called Fujiko Mine. It's interesting to see like the contrast between what I would consider like traditional Lupin, which is like, Green Jacket, this movie, Cagliostro, and then stuff like that, where it sort of like puts fun and sort of, I'll call it whimsy, over like good, like really deep character work. Because when you look at like the woman called Fujiko Mine, like that's like a dark character drama.
Yeah.
I would almost call it.
Yeah.
So I think it just shows the range of this franchise. I think it's super interesting.
And I think that's one thing that's unique about the Lupin characters in general, because a show like Fujiko Mine works incredibly well, and it works just as well as something like Cagliostro or like this movie, just in different ways. Like, the interpretations of the characters are vastly different, but they still just work so well. And that's why I think that like Lupin has a lot of strength as a franchise with these characters, because you can kind of put them anywhere in any sort of thing, and they'll do their thing, whether it's hard drama, action, noir stuff, or something that's a little bit more fun and wacky and like Saturday morning cartoon, somewhat like this movie.
And the kind of going back a little bit towards the OVA itself, the one thing that I love about it is, unlike like Cagliostro, which can have a little bit of downtime and it can be a little slow at points, this movie's pacing I think is really good, where it's going from one set piece to the other, so it's keeping you really engaged, and I think it's just amazing what they're able to pack within the short amount of time frame that happens within the movie. And I love that all the Lupin cast are used very effectively, because most of the time in like the TV specials, there's usually one of the Lupin gang that's kind of gets a lesser role, where they pretty much don't have anything to do. But in this OVA, I feel in Fuma, I feel everyone has something to do, and they contribute, and they have a moment. Whereas in later Lupin specials, I feel that that's not the case.
Yeah, you're really right. Everybody gets their time, I think. And like there was the weird. I think that Zenigata in this movie is like he definitely seems like he's just ecstatic to be there. Like he's he's happy to be chasing Lupin,
Yes.
and like happy to be like getting foiled at every corner, and he's just like, well, darn that Lupin, I'll get him next time, haha. And he elbows like the cop that's next to him or whatever, and like it's just every character gets their time, and I love that. Like even Zenigata gets his time.
Well,
And I think that's wonderful, because like the whole setup of the movie is that at the very, very beginning of the film, Zenigata is under the impression that Lupin is dead. So he has basically like literally shaved his head and become a monk. And then he finds out that Lupin is still alive, and he like breaks out his trench coat and his stupid hat, and he's like, I gotta go catch Lupin again. And like whenever he sees Lupin on the road right before they start that amazing Cagliostroian car chase scene, and like his eyes just brighten up, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, there he is! I can chase him again."
And, okay, is it just me, guys, or did the hats look weird in this movie?
I thought Zenigata's hat looked really strange. It looked wet.
It did.
It looked very wet, and it was like super droopy. I didn't notice any other hats to speak of, but yeah, that was a little strange.
It looked like it shrunk, or his head got bigger. I think it shrunk because I just imagine like him putting his like clothes in the wash for his wife to do.
Maybe he sat on it.
Maybe he sat on it. I like this.
Well, he does in one of the chase sequences. He goes pretty much through a river, which could lead to shrinkage of the hat.
That's true, but the first time you see him put the hat on, I remember distinctly thinking, what is wrong with Zenigata's hat?
Yeah, me too.
Like, I'm scrubbing through some of the footage right now, and I see him in the car, and it's just, his hat is just there, and it looks really bad, but... Like, other than that, like, I would say that the character designs and the character animation in general is just absolutely superb. And the fact that a lot of the same team from Cagliostro, such as the character designer and the background artist, came to work for this film, like, kind of a long time after Cagliostro, because this was 1987, and Cagliostro was, what, 79?
It was 1980.
1980?
Yeah, 1980, I think.
Well, either way, like, that's kind of a decent time to be away from it. I know that the one gentleman, Tomonaga, had continued to work on the franchise, but bringing him back to do like the main character design for this, having worked on Cagliostro in that style, and with Kobayashi's art design, it makes this film feel a lot like Cagliostro. And I would almost recommend it as, like, if you're looking for Cagliostro Lupin and you've seen that movie, this is a really good, like, quote-unquote sequel to Cagliostro, even though it's definitely not the same story at all.
So, Goemon is marrying Clarice from Cagliostro? Okay. That's how we're getting our sequel tie.
Nope.
Yep.
Yep. But yeah,
starring Nicolas Cage.
But the thing that I think adds to it is just the backgrounds are like almost like painted, just like the beautiful
so
trees.
Good.
It's so pretty, and also just I feel in this one especially, I just noticed when I watched it again for the podcast, just the more character facial inflections that you don't normally see in typical anime even today. Just like what we mentioned earlier, the joy on Zenigata's face of like, he's alive, Lupin's alive, or just the little kind of glances that Goemon being nervous around Mizaki, and Mizaki's kind of cute kind of reactions to him were really good. That's the one thing that's gonna stick with me with this movie is just the character facial expressions, because they're so animated, especially just the bit when they find the ancient treasure and Fujiko is just jumping up and down like a maniac, just like, yes, I was here, oh my god, yeah.
And she's like grabbing the shingles off the roof.
Yeah.
She's like, they're solid gold. But guys, we cannot not talk about the best part of the film, which is that car chase through the bathhouse.
Oh my goodness.
So good. So good.
It was like he was playing Driver, and you know in Driver games, like, they're rated T, so you can't run over pedestrians, and they always jump out of the way, like, at the right time. Yeah, that's the entire scene. Oh man, it was so good.
Oh man. It was absolutely fantastic. So if you haven't seen the film, there's a fairly long sequence where Lupin and Jigen are in their iconic like Cagliostro car, and Zenigata and a bunch of cops are chasing them, and they end up driving through a Japanese bathhouse through multiple stories of the building, including the hot springs outside, going past like dozens of people, and of course none of the people ever get run over or anything like that. But just watching these cars just drive at this insane speed through this bathhouse is absolutely ridiculous and so much fun to watch. It's just amazing. The
And
animation is so good.
And it's so filled with details of just each individual member of the bathhouse having a facial reaction. Like
Yes.
I remember the girl just like pushing a towel like, "You pervert."
Yes.
When they go through the hot spring, and also they go through like a town before they go through the bathhouse and go through a pond. They just go through so many obstacle courses that could be like something on Double Dare, based on the amount that Zenigata is able to go through. It's very kind of Blues Brothers-esque.
Yes, much like that mall scene.
Yeah, where they're driving through the mall and everyone's able to get out of the way, no problem, but they're able to cause so much destruction. And I that scene alone makes it. I think my two other favorite sequences in the movie are, at first, Goemon is hesitant to give Lupin the vase that would give him access to the ancient treasure. And Lupin finds out that it's in a vault, hidden away, and it's amongst this bookcase, which you have to move the bookcase in a distinctive combination where you're moving shelves up and down and left and right, and you zigzag. And he has like a little spider robot that just automatically can just move things around, and it's super cute, and it's just like, I wish I had a bookshelf like that.
I love that bookshelf. It was so cool. Like the way that it moved around reminded me a lot of like platforming, like puzzle video games and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And having recently gotten back into playing a lot of Breath of the Wild, it reminds me a lot of the sort of like puzzle sort of things that you would have to do in games like that, and in like Tomb Raider and stuff like that.
You remember those desktop icons from like Windows 7 that were like the weird move the block puzzles?
Mm-hmm.
I do not recall.
You don't recall those?
I
don't.
Bill.
I vaguely remember them.
Well, they were like weird pictures. Sorry, they were pictures that like you had to like move the squares up and down or left or right, like the puzzle in the movie, to make the picture.
I think I vaguely remember what you're trying to say. It was the same thing that would be like those little kids games that they would hand you in like a Happy Meal, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
yeah, I remember. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's kind of like that.
It's that.
Cool. That's very true. So we've mentioned a couple times about like the backdrops and the setting of this film, but I think something that's very interesting about this movie compared to other Lupin things is that they pretty much stay in the same place throughout the whole film. Like they're basically just in this very small rural Japanese town throughout the entirety of the movie, which is very unique because typically Lupin is a very like globe-trotting adventure sort of thing where they go to like in The Mystery of Mamo, for example, they go like to from Japan to like Paris to like the desert and like everywhere in between.
A Caribbean island.
Yeah, it's like they go everywhere, but in this movie it takes place in like rural Japan, which is something that I have never seen Lupin do before. I think, Bill, you mentioned that they do go to rural Japan in some episodes of some of the TV series, but in nothing that I've ever seen, it's always been like Europe or some big city or some exotic location or something like that. But to see this one take place in relatively the same area in rural Japan, I thought was very refreshing for the series. I thought it was really neat to see these characters in a place that I had never really seen them before.
I feel like the beautiful scenery is kind of in the beginning of the film where you get to see just very pretty, beautiful Japanese countryside, but predominantly most of the film takes place in the cave where the family treasure is hidden.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do to make that distinguish some degree is they have some building locations throughout the cave where it's basically kind of like a Rube Goldberg cave full of traps.
Yeah, they're going through like the Temple of Doom sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or like Andrew kind of alluded to, it's very Uncharted-esque where he's having to get through traps and having to find secret passageways and workarounds. It's Nathan Drake would feel at home here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he would.
Yeah, definitely.
What is your... I mentioned a bunch of my favorite sequences, but is there any, besides the bathhouse, do you guys have a favorite sequence amongst the movie?
For some reason, and this, I don't know why it stood out to me, but like, whenever the bad guy puts the vase on Fujiko's head, like for some reason that stood out to me a lot.
Yeah.
Like just that image of him just like slamming her head in the vase was just really funny. Because typically, not necessarily typically, but if you watch a lot of Lupin stuff, sometimes Fujiko gets put in very compromising situations, and I feel like if that's the kind of Lupin stuff that you're trying to avoid, this is probably a great place to go, because they never really do that with Fujiko. Like, she's kind of treated the same way as all the other characters in terms of like action and silliness and all that sort of stuff, and there's no real like exploitation level to her character in this particular movie. Plus, she is much more entertaining than she is in the Castle of Cagliostro, because she actually is Fujiko rather than just Fujiko in air quotes like she is in Cagliostro. So yeah, that was kind of a tangent from your question, but yeah, her getting the vase put on her head I thought was really funny.
I enjoyed the weird like gas acid trip part.
That was cool.
With all the
Samurai?
yeah, with all the samurai armor that was in that room, and Goemon getting like drugged, I guess, and then everybody going insane. Yeah, that was fun.
Or trying to kill each other because they think they're turning into monsters, or the Fuma clan or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, and just to comment on both those sequences, I love the Fujiko one because, one, it's genuine Fujiko where she's using her feminine wiles to get what she wants, where she's handcuffed and she's like, "Oh, my back itches. Can you please?
Oh yeah.
can you
Yeah.
please help me, please, sir, please?" And then knocking the vase on the henchman's head, which is really fun. And it's kind of like an acid trip of when they're in the samurai section, and I love that they go back to that to trick a bunch of the Fuma clan into fighting each other near the end, which is just a really fun trick. And that gas is so good that one of Fujiko's prizes is a bottle of that gas at the end. So I'm just like, they should bring that acid trick back into Lupin, that it's somewhere in Fujiko's house.
I don't know. There are some really weird episodes of Lupin, especially in towards the middle of part 4 and towards the end of Fujiko Mine. So maybe they use that weird gas on the animators.
Maybe. I think the only weak part of the entire OVA, if I had to say there was a weak part, would just be Mizaki, the character that's introduced, that's Goemon's wife to be, because I feel Murasaki. Thank you. I should be struck down by lightning with how many times I get Japanese names wrong.
It's okay.
But
Here it comes.
I feel she's pretty much just a damsel in distress for most of the movie, and that she is there to be cute.
Yeah, she definitely has this sort of like sort of passive moe high school girl who's very innocent and cute and charming, and they don't ever exploit that, but she doesn't ever really do much beyond that.
She does wear those like 80s leg warmers though.
That's true. Like, she looks super 80s, and it's kind of amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that just in my head, like, it doesn't really matter because at the end the wedding gets delayed indefinitely. Because we got to wrap up the plot, everybody. But
and there can be no consequences.
No, there cannot. She seems just a bit young for Goemon, just based off her character design.
Yeah, and based off the fact that, like, she was wearing the high school girl outfit, like, whenever they do the flashback of them first meeting, like, the way I rationalized it is maybe Goemon is just way younger than we think. And that made me feel less weird about it, but I could understand if some people, if this wasn't their first Lupin thing and they kind of know the characters, then it might feel a little bit weird, but I don't know, it wasn't really that weird.
Yeah, it's and Goemon's really respectful towards her, and he's not kind of lecherous towards her.
No, not at all.
He's very respectful. So you don't need to worry about that. And in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty minor.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, my name's Goemon, and I'm 16 years old.
Yeah, exactly. He could still be a Chunibyo.
I'm a master swordsman, and I am 16 years old.
Of course.
One other thing I'd like to mention, we kind of talked about it briefly, was the soundtrack.
Yeah.
I soundtrack is very 80s with its use of synthesizers, but it's really fun. It's like the villain's theme is just this kind of like conga beat that goes dun 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 dun, where they have just, they're blaring on the synthesizers constantly, especially during the action scenes. But it's just it's very fun, and it kind of fits kind of the tone of the movie. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to look for more of the soundtrack. I couldn't find anything excluding the kind of the pop opening theme song.
Yeah, it was. I think the soundtrack sort of made it endearing, you know, because it reminded me a lot of, at points, it reminded me a lot of like an episode of like the old X-Men TV series. Because that X-Men TV series had a lot of synth and like 80s stuff, and so like hearing that music like took me back a little bit. I was like, da 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 da, and I'm like, yeah, I feel this.
Yeah, I know this is kind of like, don't tell anyone, guys, but I kind of like that there were some things in this that were different from Lupin, like the fact that the like, I really like Toshio Furukawa as Lupin. I thought he did a great job. Like, like I like him a lot as Ataru in Urusei Yatsura, and I think he definitely made Lupin more like, not necessarily silly, but a little bit more like boyish maybe. But I didn't necessarily mind that. I thought that was great. I thought all the other characters sounded fine. I mean, of course, I'm not as hyper aware of it as a Japanese fan would be, because they would know the language better, and they would be able to discern between voices a lot better than someone who is not a native Japanese speaker. But I really liked that, and I liked the music a lot. So I know that sort of the reasons why those things were not included were unfortunate, but I don't think that those elements being absent make the movie any less good.
I very much agree. I know people are very resistant to change, and a change can kind of make people a little nervous, but I feel like the new cast is pretty on point with their characterizations of the Lupin gang. Like, everyone's in character. There's no kind of weird, like, Fujiko wouldn't do that, or Zenigata wouldn't do that. I think everyone was rightly on point. I would just say, if you find this somewhere, or if you are finding it maybe in Japan, maybe I don't know. You got the plane ticket just to buy the DVD. um, do not listen to the dubcast. I listened to the dubcast when I first watched it, and tried again recently, and there's no one really of note in the Anime Go dubcast, and I bet the English cast tried their best, and I don't wish any ill will on them, but it's very jarring the English cast, so I would strictly stick with the Japanese cast.
Bummed that there's no David Hayter.
Yeah.
And sort of going back to what you said about like people saying that Goemon wouldn't do that or Zenigata wouldn't do that. It's hard to put Lupin characters in boxes because they are in so much varied things. So
That's very true. Yeah.
Trying to assume a character's action in anything Lupin, because Part 4 is drastically different from Part 1. I'm
sorry. I would disagree to some degree, because there's always going to be some through lines that I feel are always going to be in Lupin things, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Like Zenigata's constant hunt for Lupin, and his one goal and the one thing he's obsessed about.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's always been there, no matter whether it's a more gruff Zenigata or a more goofy Zenigata, or Fujiko using kind of her feminine wiles and her body to kind of get what she wants. Like that can either be played more for sexually, or that could be played more as just kind of I don't know what's the word, kind of like it's gonna sound weird, kind of more Betty Boopish, where it's just kind of like it's kind of cute.
Okay.
I don't know.
That makes sense.
But I feel like there's certain through lines that stay. It's just the tone changes depending on what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. But and like once again, like sort of, I wouldn't call like any of the characters in Lupin static. I think they all, have experience change, and even the stuff that I've watched, like if you think about Lupin the Third as like a consistent like narrative, which I'm not sure if people do or not.
Most people don't.
Okay, so they don't. So then the characters could be static or dynamic, but they can always be, sort of weird alternate universe all-star Spider-Man, Lupin the Third. Sorry, isn't all-star DC? Wait a minute, I'm wandering into unknown territory with comic books. There's an all-star. There's an all-star series of like AU. It's All-Star Superman. It's like AU Superman, and I think I would sort of put like all the Lupin series is in sort of like an AU sort of like box. Is that fair?
I would describe it as, depending on the situation, they can have arcs that are going on. Like in the current Lupin the Third TV show that's going on, one thing that's going on, one kind of storyline that's been reoccurring in each of the arcs is just like, what's the relationship between Lupin and Fujiko, where everyone treats them as kind of like a long-term boyfriend and girlfriend that have broken up recently, and people are wondering like why aren't you more just kind of like how you used to be, of Lupin chasing you and Lupin being more kind of a lovey-dovey towards Fujiko, doing whatever she wants. So I think these characters can be dynamic in their situations, and it just really depends on the story that whoever is trying to tell.
Yeah, I think their dynamicy comes not necessarily between iterations, but during iterations. Like, you can notice, like, character changes in, specifically Part 4 Lupin as a character or something like that. Or specifically the, I don't know, it's kind of not a great example, but like the Lupin of Castle of Cagliostro or something like that. Like, the characters can be dynamic within their own, like, specific iteration. Like, like in Crisis in Tokyo, for example, like Zenigata, you sort of learn a lot about him and how he sort of acts kind of like a father figure to like that reporter girl in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we learn a little bit about him through that, but that doesn't necessarily carry into the next iteration. They kind of start with a clean slate every time, unless otherwise specified.
Or how, like, in Fujiko Mine, Lupin is very much more brash and is very much more upfront with what he wants, and is more more upfront about what he wants sexually. Whereas compared in Cagliostro, it's a more older, more mature Lupin.
Mm-hmm.
So it just really depends on the iteration, and that there could be a Lupin fan timeline. Please, I don't want that to happen.
Oh man, that would give me such a headache.
Oh man.
That'd give me Vietnam level flashbacks to the Zelda timeline and how people want to fit everything in a box. But anyway, that's another.
I am sure that someone has tried.
I love Lupin as you guys know, but I'm not that insane to create a Lupin timeline.
Not yet.
When I start doing that, put me in a mental asylum. But back to I think just the special the OVA itself, Fuma Conspiracy. Do you guys have any kind of other thoughts, or maybe our final thought, if you about Fuma Conspiracy, and would you recommend it to our listeners today?
Yeah. I would, if you can get it.
Yeah. Austin, I've been seeing on Twitter that you've been very vocal about, come on, Discotheque, you should bring this back.
Yeah.
And I love that. I wish they would respond. I don't know why, out of all the Lupin things, this one is out of print. Because everything else is still in print, excluding the 70s movie, that's actually for the better.
Here's my very baseless theory. So this was part of the very, very early Discotheque releases way back like 11 years ago. So maybe, and this is just a hunch, that they were not able to afford to sign very, very long-term contracts back then. So maybe this is just one of those things that expired and then maybe they could get again if they just rebid for it or something. Because I'm trying to think of an example of something that Discotheque has put back into print that was out of print before. I don't know if there's a good example of that in terms of their own stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh, in terms of their own stuff, that's a bit hard. But I can think of kind of outside examples, like they put out Blue Submarine #6, which was put up by Bondi Visual back in the day.
Yeah, that's not what I meant. Like, of course they've done like literally dozens of license rescues from like other companies, but I was thinking if there's anything that went out of print for them that they then put back into print.
Oh wait, I got one.
Okay.
The Fist of the North Star, yes. TV show.
That is true. That is a very good example. And I don't know why that went out of print the first time, but whenever they brought it back the second time, that release was way better, according to a lot of folks, because they were able to do the SD Blu-ray and put it all in one set rather than the big like DVD box sets. So maybe this is something that's in a very similar situation, where it's like they can still get it, they just haven't yet. And my hopes is that if their new project, kind of like what they're doing with The Legend of the Gold of Babylon, like putting that back into print in Blu-ray format with a brand new English dub from the Genion cast, I hope that if that is very successful for them, then they will hopefully go back to Fuma Conspiracy and do the exact same thing. I would love that. I think this movie I like the DVD already looks gorgeous. Like I ripped it from you before you left, Bill, and I'm looking at it right now on my computer, and like it's just stunningly beautiful. Like even in like standard definition. But like imagining this in Blu-ray quality would just be outstanding. So I would love to see a Blu-ray of this with like the same old features and hopefully some more ones too. And if they get the Jenny on cast to come back and dub it, that would just be icing on the cake. I think it'd be so good.
I think they could do that because this is much shorter than what they've planned to do. If they've announced like Golden Babylon is much longer. It's like around 2 hours, and this would probably not take as much time to get it recorded. I think this would be a great fit for their kind of effort to do new dubs, which I am happy and surprised that they're doing that. So maybe in the future, Discotheque will get the license back for Fuma Conspiracy because they have already established relationship with TMS.
Yes.
Excuse me. Excuse me. With they've basically been putting out Lupin product almost every year at this point now, with different TV specials and basically the yearly release of Red Jacket. Red Jacket Part 3 is going to get released probably in the winter around Christmas time, and they're going to be releasing Blue Jacket in those separate dub and sub releases very soon. So they have a very strong relationship with TMS or whoever has the rights to the Lupin franchise. So I wouldn't be surprised if hopefully down the road Fuma Conspiracy shows up on an SD Blu-ray, which would be very nice.
And they could easily market it as a very good follow-up to Cagliostro, which they also own, which is very nice for them, for sure.
I think a really good one, too, if they could do it, would be an SD Blu-ray of the Fuma Conspiracy with a redub with the Ginny on cast, and as an added bonus, they put in the 40th anniversary OVA special short, which had the last time the original dub cast, the original Lupin Japanese cast were together to do their roles, excluding the Lupin voice actor who had passed away. I think that would be a cool one too, because that little OVA is only like 10 minutes. I think that'd be a nice kind of fit because they're both OVAs technically, and that'd be kind of a nice surprise because that's never been released here in the States.
Heck yeah, I'd buy it. I'd buy it right now. All right, so got a couple Twitter questions here, but I guess is there any final thoughts from you guys? Anything you wanted to say, Andrew?
Not really. It's a really good movie. If you somehow find a rip on a certain person named Austin Craver's computer, and you wanna
yes.
if you wanna watch it, it's really really good. Or you go to Bill's house and beg for his DVD. It's a really good movie. If you get a chance to see it.
Absolutely. Closing thoughts, Bill?
I love this OVA. I think it's in my Lupin the Third top 5 of Lupin things that I've seen. Just because it's so compact and there's constant action happening from set piece to set piece. It keeps you engaged, and everyone of the Lupin cast has something to do. No one's really left out. It's probably the most perfect use of the Lupin cast that I have seen, if you don't count the TV shows. So yeah, if you're willing to pay the exorbitant price to buy the DVD, or if you need to find it through other means, I would highly recommend seeing this OVA.
So the cheapest way to get a hold of a copy of this legally is to buy the VHS tape released from Animigo back in the early 90s for about $10 on eBay. Or if you want to do that, I'm real quick just searching here on eBay for it because I don't think it's on Amazon. But oh boy, if you want if you want a Animigo DVD of it, it goes between $70 and $75. And
Wow.
I'm seeing right here in like the lowest price for the discotheque version that I see is $47.99. Oh wait, no, that's the Japanese DVD, which is still very expensive because Japanese DVD prices are crazy. But let's see, the cheapest one I'm seeing on here is $70.
Wow.
With a
Wow.
modest $3.75 for shipping.
Just get the tape.
Let's get the tape. Get the tape.
Yeah, buy the tape and then buy special equipment so that way you can rip the tape into a special video file to watch on your computer, and then you can have it forever.
Just don't use Kiss Anime because it's very bad for your computer.
Yeah,
Hope you like malware.
Hope you like malware.
or secret Bitcoin mining.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So don't use that site. That's only for villains. Only villains do that. Yes, all right. So we kind of already talked about it, but real quick, final question. What you can only pick one. Andrew, what is the most iconic scene from Lupin the Third, the Fuma Conspiracy?
The car chase.
Bill?
Probably car chase, but my favorite scene is the spider opening the vault.
My most iconic shot or scene would probably, since Andrew kind of already said mine, I'm gonna go with the train sequence.
Train sequence is very fun.
The train sequence is very good. The prisoner exchange at the train tracks is so cool. A wonderful, incredible bit of filmmaking right there. Superb directorial job in that particular scene. I'm glad that I did not wake up in a cold sweat tonight, remembering that I forgot to talk about that train scene because it's really cool, very cool.
Do you want to briefly mention it?
Nope. They can just go watch the movie.
Yes.
It's a very, very excellent scene towards the beginning of the film. So yeah, please go watch it. Please grab a hold of it and tweet at Discotheque and ask them very nicely to put this back into print. Or if you see them at a convention, please kindly ask them about it. I'm sure they get questions about licenses all the time. Or better not to ask them, but just say, hey, if you guys got Fuma Conspiracy, I would really appreciate it, or something like that. Because if you ask them about it, they'll probably not be able to answer your question. But if you tell them that you want to see this movie, they will probably remember it. So yeah, go ask very nicely, or say rather.
As a Trojan horse, you could say, "Tell me about your old logo with the Space Channel 5 chick with the rapping with the rapping guy saying discotheque." And then lead into Fuma Conspiracy.
Perfect. That'll do as well. All right, so we got a couple Twitter questions here from our good buddy Basil over at It's Basil Time. This is Basil, the convention director of Hamacon and a member of the Awesome Cast, and is a great guy. Always has awesome questions for us. So he's got a couple here. So to the group, I guess we'll start with Bill. What's your favorite jacket on Lupin? I'm going to go with just aesthetically.
If I have to go aesthetically, you know what? You gotta go with red. Red's his trademark color.
All right, Andrew?
Aesthetically, man, he looks... I think the combo of the black shirt, the red tie, the blue jacket, and the gray pants is really, really good.
I agree, but I'm going to go with his super iconic look as my favorite, with the black shirt, the yellow tie, and the green jacket. I think that's
really
my
good.
favorite color combo.
I'm glad that none of us chose the pink jacket, because if someone chose pink jacket, I would have said, you're trying to be an ultra hipster here.
I have never seen an ounce of pink jacket Lupin, and one of these days I will, but I cannot speak to that at all.
Just watch in the new Lupin series that's been going on, they kind of have homage episodes to the older series. Mm-hmm. There's a pink jacket episode where he wears the pink jacket, and it's very much in the tone of the pink jacket series. So
sweet.
I would recommend just go watch that.
So Basil also asks, what is your favorite interpretation of a Lupin series? For me, I think so far as a whole, I've enjoyed the Blue Jacket content because it has been so varied. Like, it does a lot of different styles of Lupin in one series, and it also has a very amazing production style and character design and animation in general. So as a whole, I really like what they're doing with Blue Jacket. But if I had to pick a favorite Lupin thing at all, it would be Fujiko Mine. Bill?
You know what? I'm gonna be a loser and pretty much say the same thing. Cause I love, especially when they were doing the part 4, how it had a variety of tones where it could be serious, but it also could be very lighthearted, or it could be funny. It went through the full gamut of the Lupin franchise, which I really enjoyed, and I just love Fujiko Mine because of that wonderful watercolor art style, and we probably also need to do a podcast on Fujiko Mine.
We
well.
will, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll talk about how much of a visual genius Takeshi Koike is.
By the way, people, we're gonna have a lot more Lupin podcasts in the future. This will be a recurring thing.
Absolutely.
To the Lupin the Third network.
Well,
Andrew?
the Lupin the Third cold cases.
Yes. I've seen the most the thing I've seen the most of is Blue Jacket. And I do really enjoy Blue Jacket. I think it's very good. But from the little that I've seen of Green Jacket, I love that tone and the classic feel of just an old cops and robbers movie. I think that's just so much fun, and probably the thing that appeals to me the most would be Green Jacket.
So what made us pick the Fuma Conspiracy to talk about? I would say because it's awesome.
I would say
in actuality,
I was cheerleading about it and just being like, "You guys got to see this," and so I made you sit down and watch it, and you were like, "This is amazing." Which is a known fact that this is amazing.
Yes, Bill came up to visit us last weekend or so, and I was just like, Bill, please bring Fuma Conspiracy because I cannot buy it because it's too expensive. And he brought it up, and we all watched it, and it was just so freaking good. I was like, immediately, we got to do our next Lupin episode about this one. So here we are. So why is Zenigata so pure and good? Because he's amazing, except, probably my least favorite Zenigata is, Fujiko Mine's Zenigata, because he's too mean and, not as silly. He's not as fun to watch on screen, I don't think.
He was so much fun to watch in this movie.
Yeah, he was.
He's just a pure boy that got involved in religion after Lupin died, just because he had nothing to live for anymore. And then he realizes Lupin is back, and he's just... It made me want to cry looking at his face in that chase scene where he just cracked this big ol' smile. I love Zenigata. He is pure and good.
You know why? Because it's kind of like when I think this is going to be a weird comparison, but it's kind of like when you're a little kid and the main thing you love to do is maybe play a certain game, like tag or hide and go seek or maybe a certain sport, where it just brought you so much joy. To me, I feel like Zenigata feels like it's a game, and it's just like... It brings him so much joy just to try and get him, because Lupin can be so challenging, where it's kind of like the Red Runner and Coyote. they want to they kind of need each other, and I think Lupin has an affection for Zenigata that's kind of shown throughout the season, or not the franchise in general, where Zenigata can help him as a cover. He also kind of has a mutual respect for Zenigata, and I think Zenigata had the same for Lupin, where it's just they respect each other and they like the chase. They love the chase, and it's just so innocent and so fun.
Zenigata is a huge tsundere.
Yeah.
He just is.
Excluding Fujiko Mine, which is kind of the one Zenigata I don't enjoy, because it weirded me out when he got intimate with Fujiko Mine. I was just kind of like, ugh.
Oh, we're gonna forget that happened. We'll talk about that in the Fujiko Mine episode, no doubt.
Yeah.
But what is the best Jigen and Goemon interaction? Trying to think of any specific ones from the movie.
I'm trying to think. Probably. This isn't in Fuma Conspiracy, but when in Cagliostro, when Clarice and Lupin are about to leave, and Goemon and Jigen are like really kind of starstruck, where he's just kind of like, Jigen's like, she called me a knight, and Goemon's like, you're not a knight. that was pretty good. Or just their kind of mutual feelings of just kind of like, Lupin, why are you messing around with Fujiko? Like all the stuff in Mystery Mamo or anything.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, come on, dude. You're falling for the same trap again and again. Don't fall for this trap.
Yeah, they're kind of like Lupin and Fujiko's Greek chorus. Like they kind of say what the audience is thinking a lot of the time.
Sorry, I'm just doing listicles at this point, but another great moment was, I think it was in either Red Jacket or they might have done it in Blue Jacket Part 4, where Lupin has a bomb that's in his body and he has to steal a certain item for this wealthy patron. That's where he's like, well, I'm going to die because I'm not going to make it, and Goemon and Jigen jump in the car just like, we're in this together. We're not letting you. You're not going to get away doing this solo.
Yeah, they're great. Great characters all around, everywhere. They're in Lupin. They're all in Lupin. It's awesome. Good show. Yeah, there's my review. Whole franchise right there.
Good show.
It is good.
All right, dudes. Well, okay. There's a couple more questions. Okay, one more question, but this is just for me. How was my birthday? It was great. Thank you for asking, Basil. I appreciate it. I got to go eat some delicious sushi with my family, and it was wonderful. And thank you for being here.
And I was there.
Yeah.
I was there. Yeah.
You get the distinguished honor of being related to me.
Yeah.
Woo! All right, guys. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast. Bill, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you introducing me to Lupin in general and for bringing your DVD so we could all watch it together. And thank you for being on this podcast this evening.
It's my pleasure. I will always be here to talk about Lupin.
And Andrew, thank you very much for joining the episode. I know we don't hear from you a whole lot these days, but thank you for your wonderful thoughts and stuffs about Lupin, and hopefully we'll have you on to talk about Castle of Cagliostro whenever we show you that, hopefully as soon as possible.
Yeah, you just gotta force it down my throat.
Yep, we will have to do a rabbit stream where we all watch it on Netflix.
Okay.
Because that is a great way to watch it, because it's on there now.
But if I can get on the pod more, if my schedule lines up, then I might. I don't know.
We'd love to have you. All right, folks. Bill, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at WBForeman999, where I'm mostly just retweeting other people because they're much smarter than I am. Mostly,
Same.
mostly either something from Justin Sudeikis, because he's my secret anime production crush that I just want to ask a million questions of to, or I will do random observations such as what is the DNA of a Linkin Park music video.
When are you gonna do your first video essay on that so you can be one of those shouty YouTube people?
I don't think I want to enter the YouTube space where I get 5,000 negative comments and they tell me, but you didn't mention so and so video from so and so the fifth album for this song. Nah, I don't want to go through that.
And Andrew, where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter as well at toaster_Mike, and I tweet about anime sometimes and sports sometimes. And if you ever have any good laid back camp art, or you want to talk to me about Yotsuba, I'm there. I always check my Twitter. So if any of you are into the Yotes, then I'm around.
And you can find me over on Twitter as well at Bebop Shock. That's Bebop as in Cowboy Bebop and Shock as in Bioshock. And you can find me retweeting a bunch of Kingdom Hearts fan art and randomly just talking to myself in public, because that's what Twitter's for, right? And I'll just say it again, even though I said it. What were you saying, Bill?
Oh, I was just saying, it's like a public square where you just want to yell and just scream at the top of the lungs, and everyone's just going, huh? Who's that crazy man talking in the middle of the street?
And then they press the like. And that's Twitter.
That's Twitter.
Anyway, you can find me over there, but you can find, like I said earlier, you can find all the Third Impact anime-related stuff over on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/thirdimpactanime, and you can also find our group there. Please add yourself, add your friends. We'd really appreciate it. If you want to see the main hub of all the stuff that we do have a website that we use occasionally. We will post our show notes up there for this episode, and for a lot of the more recent episodes. We haven't got a lot of the older episode stuff up there yet, even though Bill and I have been working lately to get production notes written for some of our older content. You can find our recent stuff up on the website.
And plug, whenever this comes out, there will be an article up that about how Netflix is not the anime boogeyman that most people on Twitter would make you think that's the case.
Ooh.
So
well, by
the time this episode reaches you, the public, that article should be up.
If I've learned anything in the last week from the stupid internet, is that apparently Crunchyroll is the anime boogeyman, which that whole stupid argument is dumb on so many levels. Don't get me started. And that's why it's the end of the episode. So, alright, you can find Third Impact Anime over at thirdimpactanime.wordpress.com. You can also find us on Twitter at TI_anime. And Andrew, you had one last thing you wanted to say?
And join us next time for Lupin the Third, National Treasure, starring Nicolas Cage as Lupin and Andy Serkis as Fujiko Mine.
Don't forget a special cameo by Ernest Borgnine.
And yes, yeah, we're gonna be filming it and reviewing it.
Absolutely.
All ourselves.
All by ourselves.
Yes.
Find us on Patreon.
me on.
Alright guys, thanks again for listening and tolerating us, and we will see you in the next episode. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.